Welcome back to Bleeding Blue, presented by John Boy Media and Talking Giants. With me is one of my best friends, Nikki Snacks. This is a New York Football Giants history podcast. We're starting something new this week, Snacks, and I'm very excited for it. You get a little bit of a teaser and a taste of what we're going to be talking about from the title of the video, title of the show. Snacks, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, really great. My hair looks pretty good. My eyes look blue. Whoa.
You have beautiful eyes. We've always talked about how you have beautiful eyes.
It's really nice of you to say. Yeah, but other than that, I'm doing really good. Check out this sweatshirt, by the way. Isn't that cool?
Where'd you get it?
And it's it's the Bill Belichick style.
Ooh.
Really cool. I made it myself.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah. I typed in cutoff hoodie, and then I saw customized cutoff hoodie, and then I just put G and then men on it.
You should sell them to Bleeding Blue and Talking Giants listeners.
Oh, you want to?
I think we should.
I don't think I'd make any money, but yeah, that's a good idea.
It's the same thing like what Bobby does for like the stickers and stuff. Like, he doesn't make money on that.
That's true. But
probably loses money.
This is like, I get like a lot of compliments on this. So
yeah, no, that's great. Especially Bill. I think a lot of people would appreciate the Bill Belichick. And you know what? It's great. I'm trying. All right, we're gonna get to Giants history. We're gonna talk about this one.
Bill Belichick is Giants history. So
Bill Belichick is Giants history. But I'm trying to become a person that wears a sweatshirt. I'm not doing it right now. I'm trying to become a person that wears a sweatshirt indoors. I'm trying to adapt that mentality because I think it's fun. It's very cozy, but I get too hot. So I think that's like the perfect, like, meet me halfway of sleeves, but sweatshirt with the hood, etc.
It's the most ideal thing. And, you know, when we can actually go to football games, which we probably won't be able to until
never,
like 2040.
I recently dropped
this is my September wear.
That's your September wear. Yeah,
it's perfect because it's not hot, but it's like maybe a little chilly.
Breezy.
Because the Meadowlands is always like 15 degrees colder than wherever you are because of the wind and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is my go-to. But you want to get into this, bitch?
Yeah, why don't you describe kind of what we're moving to, what we're doing? It's a kind of, if you were listening last summer to our show, it was just a podcast at the time, but if you were listening to our show, we were reading a book called If These Walls Could Talk by Ernie Palladino, and we kind of went through the chapters, and that was honestly my favorite, show idea, segment idea that we had and that we did over the summer, reading that book, going chapter by chapter and reading some of our favorite stories. So what are you going to be doing? I was reading that. So now you're going to be reading something. What are we going to be reading?
Something. Yes. And that was a lot of fun. We like to read, especially about Giants history. So this book is probably near and dear to a lot of people because that's the book right there. It's called A Team to Believe In. And it's written by, I don't know if you noticed who it's written by. Tom Coughlin. So Tom Coughlin was the Giants coach from 2004 to 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And after the magical 2007 season, he wrote a book about that season. And I can promise you that all the behind the scenes stuff that we will get to, it is well worth your time. And if you do love the Giants, which if you're listening to the show or watching the show, I would assume you are a fan. So we're going to talk about this book and just some, we'll start with the first couple chapters today, because it's not that long of a book and we'll get to it all. There's a couple crying moments because I've read the book a few times.
Oh, and you're a sobber. Like,
I was crying last week.
You were crying last week when we were talking about how much you love Eli Manning. You shed a few tears.
Right, exactly. And I love Tom Coughlin. So I'm not crying this episode because the first two chapters are not cry worthy.
No.
Anyway, you want to get into it?
Let's get into it.
Get into it. Okay. So I want to start off. We're going to start. I was wondering how I'm going to do this. If I want to start later in the book and just really get to like the fun, juicy stuff of the stories, but obviously that's boring a little bit, I guess. So I want to start at the very beginning and how it leads up into the actual 2007 season. So Coach Coughlin writes, the first chapter is really about the 2006 season and the playoff loss to Philly and what needs to be done in 2007. So obviously the Giants lost to Philly in the 2006 wild card game. I think it was 23-20.
Yep.
On a last second 38-yard field goal by David Akers, a game in which they had come back down 10 and made it a game. And that second half of the game, Coughlin actually talks about it in here. He saw the first signs of Eli's real growth. He said he saw it in 2005 when he had a very nice year, but that second half of the wild card game against Philly, he showed that he really can be the franchise guy and a guy that the Giants can win with. But it just obviously the first insert I want to say, it's very quick. Just getting to the playoffs was a relief to some in the organization and probably to Giants fans as well. But there is no relief for me, talking about himself, Coach Coughlin, because the Giants were 6-2 to start that year. And they were riding high. Everything was going well. And then all of a sudden, 4 losses in a row and a few really bad ones. If you remember correctly, they lost to the lowly Jaguars. And then the next week, they lost to the Tennessee Titans in brutal fashion. I think we were just talking about, they were up 24-0, and Matthias Kiwanuka had Vince Young wrapped in his arms for a sack to win the game. And Vince Young scrambles for 20 yards, and the Titans pull off the comeback and win the game. So that is just where it was. And the whole media and all the fan base was wanting to fire Tom Coughlin. So that's why bringing that up to start, that just getting to the playoffs was not enough for him. Maybe to some, but not to him, because of just how the team started, how it finished, and everything in between.
And the locker room was in disarray. And we talked about this over the summer in If These Walls Could Talk, where Michael Strahan had a famous like peanut butter and jelly rant in front of his that's what it's known as, like the PB&J rant, the PB&J speech, where after that, 24-point comeback against the Titans, where they allowed the 24-point comeback, there was a bit of beef between Plaxico Burress, where Plaxico Burress questioned the effort on the defensive side of the ball. Michael Strahan, being the vocal leader that he was, and Snacks, this is something that's not talked about enough. Because Michael Strahan's a Hall of Famer, because he has the most sacks in franchise history, because he finished off his career winning the Super Bowl. We view Michael Strahan. He was the perfect leader. He was the perfect guy. He had a lot of things to say. And he got into a ton of altercations, like unnecessary altercations that you can argue hurt the team. Like crazy.
Yeah.
He got into fist fights with guys earlier in his career, like offensive tackles, talking back to Plax, and that caused a problem. So then what that speech was, the PB&J speech, he was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and between his 2 front teeth, the shit was just spitting out of his mouth to this one reporter, where he's like, if you're going to talk to somebody, if you're going to ask somebody a question, you come to me and you ask that question.
Your face when you ask me this question and the way you're going to ask it. I know you're going to ask it in a way that's just more of a division and more of a negative way than what it was. All right, so come here, I want to see your face. Please, part so I can see your face. If you are a responsible journalist and look me in the eye, ask me this question, please. The way that you want to ask it, come here. Look a man in the eye before you try to kill him or make up something. Look him in the eye.
So the locker room itself featured a ton of personalities, because he had Plax, who was, I wouldn't say a bad teammate. I don't call Michael Strahan a bad teammate either, but even Tiki Barber, you got a lot of veterans.
And a lot of egos. Jeremy Shockey. Like these were a lot of head cases in one locker room. It's a very compatible elements to be in. And when you have Michael Strahan, who's the most vocal of them all, and his voice resonates louder than anybody's in that room and in that organization, essentially, it's going to be some issues. There's going to be some division in that locker room.
Right. And a lot of people talk about now, like this past summer, just to compare it, right? A lot of people are talking about this past summer. Are these young guys going to really get Joe Judge's message of, being a hard-nosed coach and discipline and stuff like that? It's always you feel like it's always the young guys. Like a young team is very receptive to that. But the Giants, back then, Shockey was pretty much a vet. Antonio Pierce was signed as a free agent. Plax was signed as a free agent. Michael Strahan, we all know, was kind of towards the end of his career. So
they were a veteran-filled team. Yeah.
So ththese aren't guys that you would typically perceive as guys who would be very receptive of Tom Coughlin's no nonsense. We're going to talk about firm, fair, honest, and demanding.
Firm, fair, honest, and demanding. That's the code I've always operated under.
Mentality that he had when he came in.
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that because we are going to get to something about that in just a few moments. But really, just that the playoff game that he talks about and how he saw it through his eyes is really telling, because obviously the coach and the players think they're going to win. Um, but he really thought that they were going to win, even when they were down 20-10. He said through all the injuries, through all of the media and through all of the distractions from players in the media talking and talking and talking, I went into the fourth quarter thinking we were still going to win this game. And we were saying it before the show. His mindset is unbelievable to me, because after the game, I'm ready here. This is really, outside of announcing his retirement early, like a scumbag that he was. This is Tiki Barber after the game was critical of coaches in post-game interviews. I have never been on a team where grievances were aired for all to hear, and it was something I wouldn't stand for. I spoke to Tiki privately about being a part of the solution, reminding him that a football team is a family. And I'm sorry, this was after the playoff loss in Carolina. I apologize. And just goes to show that when he takes that, so right off the rip, I don't think they liked each other at all, which I know I don't understand, because without Tom Coughlin, Tiki Barber is probably still fumbling the football. And for him to just air his grievances out in the media is never good to begin with, let alone when you're the star player on the team. It shows the young guys and the other guys on the team that, okay, well, this is okay. I can blast the coach. I can blast the organization in the media. You can't do that. I'm sorry. You just don't do that. So that was the first instance of which Tiki really became a thorn in the Giants' side, and it all went downhill. Obviously, he announced that he was retiring at the end of the year in the middle of 2006. And to me, shot to shit everything. How do you play like that? I don't know how a team goes in preparing week in and week out, and they're looking at Tiki Barber like, well, this guy's checked out after the year.
Yep.
So it puts a stain on it. But I wanted to I'm not going to talk about Tiki. We're going to talk about him later on this summer. I can't get into it now.
So let's just briefly, is Tiki Barber the most hated player, like in your mind and in your fandom, who has ever played for the franchise?
There is not a close second. I hate Tiki Barber. I hate him.
And there is a story that we tell once a year. I'm saving it for the summer because I think this show is going to be really fun over the summer when people are getting more excited for football and stuff like that. So we're going to share it once a year. I'll even try to find the date that we shared it last year, and we'll try to share it around the same time.
Yes.
You had an interaction with Tiki Barber's family.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll save that.
Not him, with his family.
Not him.
Yeah, it was ugly, and it's not something I'm proud of, but it's something that needed to be done. So I don't
should
give a
be
shit.
Though.
Of course I'm proud,
because there's a lot of people who also agree with you. You have your spit list. If you ever saw him in person, you would spit on him.
Correct.
There's a lot of people that are on that list. Tiki Barber, I'm sure, is very close to number
one.
He is number one.
Mm-hmm.
Big. So you had an opportunity to get a close second and metaphorically spit on somebody's face, and you did. So we're gonna save that story though.
We will indeed save that story.
Stay tuned.
But back to Tommy C, Coach Coughlin. So like I was saying before, this 2006 season was a drag for him and a drag for, I'm sure, his family, because that was his third year coaching. And honestly, they made the playoffs 2 of the first 3 years, which is pretty impressive for a quarterback second and third year. But it wasn't enough, because he was a lot to handle, Coach Coughlin. Like, he was kind of a prick in the media. He was a prick to the players. He came in as like this dictator, like no fun, no nonsense. Put your socks on right. Show up 5 minutes. If the meeting's at 12 o'clock, you're here at 11:55, or you're late. Like, so he was very authoritative. So that may not resonate well with others.
Yeah.
And after the 2006 season, I had mentioned that he was so confident that he was coming back, when everybody in the media, every newspaper outlet blasting him, every radio host in New York blasting him that Coughlin's got to go, Coughlin's got to go, Coughlin's got to go. You hear that for months and months and months. And then when your season ends in disappointment after an 8-8 season and a close wild card loss, you're like, okay, is this it? This might be out. The players are talking shit about me in the media and everything like that. So he goes into it thinking that he is going to be the coach next year, which I still find mind blowing. And he goes home.
I have a quick question about that.
Shoot.
Man, this is really going to test the memory, and this is bad prep on our end. Do we know when Ernie Accorsi retired?
Um, it's mentioned in here, but it was obviously after the 2006 season.
Right.
I don't know the month.
I wonder when people knew, and include this in the comments, include this in the replies. We're doing the live chat right now. Mondays at 6 p.m. By the way, if you're watching this afterwards, Monday 6 p.m. on YouTube, on the Talking Giants YouTube. We have a good time. Thanks for everybody that's been tuning in every week. But it's so strange to hear how Coughlin was so confident that he was coming back, despite there being a GM change. It's not because Ernie, of course, he got fired.
I'm sure he had an idea that Ernie was going to retire. So,
and typically, the whole, you want to keep the GM, and which the Giants are not good at, by the way. You want to keep the
Good
GM.
Lord.
You want to keep the GM and the coach, on the same arm length together. If you have a new GM coming in, you kind of want that GM to pick your coach, but also the Giants usually don't hire outside the building, which was the case with Jerry Reese, which, for 2 Super Bowls, I would say it relatively worked out.
There's nothing I can say bad. I could say a lot of bad things about Jerry Reese, but then after that, you have to appreciate what he did, and he should be in the Giants Ring of Honor. Just saying. But so Coughlin's feeling confident, and he stayed late at the office one night. He gets home. I pulled up to the driveway, 9 p.m. on a Monday. My kids, Tim and Katie's cars were in the driveway, and that's not abnormal for them to be there. But this was a little different at 9 o'clock on a Monday night. I get out of the car, pick up my bag, and walk into the house. Tim, Katie, and Judy — Judy is his wife, Tim and Katie are his kids — are sitting at the kitchen table, and I can tell from their faces that something is wrong. Dad, Katie says right away, why are you putting up with this? Talking about the media outlash and the players talking out on him. Is it worth it? Tim asked. They are dragging your name through the mud. You're getting hammered out there. So obviously this is taking a toll on his family too. And being an NFL coach has got to be one of the most difficult things in the world. It really has to, because you are under an absolute microscope 24/7. You could barely spend any time with your family because you have to literally watch film 24/7 all the time. And to hear like that Tom's kids are sitting him down, and he's a 61-year-old man. His kids are probably like in their mid-30s and whatnot. They have kids. They're sitting him down, be like, Dad, you don't want to coach anymore? That's fine by us. And Coughlin actually says, he goes, we talk for an hour or two, then Tim and Katie drive away, and for a moment I feel the strain that they must be feeling at work and in their neighborhoods as Tom Coughlin's children. That is a difficult part of the profession. That really is tough. You don't think about the family members when the New York Post you're on the back page of the New York Post talking about getting fired and should be fired, and this guy sucks. He can't do it. He can't do it. Like, that's my father. That's not an easy thing to deal with. So I could understand why Coughlin feels a certain way about his job security and, getting hammered in the press, and then having to feel like his kids it's a burden for them too. So that's a big double whammy for Coach Coughlin.
Yeah, it's one of the few professions where, you can be an asshole and you can fire back, but it's one of the few professions, maybe in life, and maybe I'm also getting this wrong, I feel like a player can easily fire back too and say, we're doing our best, it's a team game, blah, blah, blah. But no, as a coach, you really can't fire back because you're the leader of the team, and you need to be calm, composed, cool, collected, everything like that. So that's a really good point. It's so strange how, maybe, Coughlin was so confident that he would be coming back, but also I'm sure there was a part of his mind that was saying, and that was asking, is it right for me to even come back? Like, would I want to come back?
Exactly. And it's funny because Tom Coughlin might have been the only person on planet Earth that was confident he was coming back for the job. I think it was evident in the sit down with his kids that they saw the writing on the wall, and they almost wanted to drag him out of the office because they didn't want him to keep putting up with it. Yeah. But shortly after, he had a meeting with John Mara and the organization, and it turns out they gave him a 1-year deal. This was it. The mandate. He said, and I quote, "As I walk out, I am satisfied that they believe I can be the one to turn this around. Though it is unspoken, it is clear it is time to win or else." So Giants usually don't keep, what do they call it? Lame duck coaches or lame duck GMs. So they gave him a 1-year extension, but if they didn't win this year, he was out the door. So he said the first thing that Coughlin really said that he needs to change for the 2007 season is is actually change the way he is seen in front of his players and in the media, because he had a lot of wars with the New York press. He was not a very good person to ask questions to and ask follow-up questions to. He was very short, he was very stern, and he was very long-winded in his opening statement, which I will get to. So Giants Pat Hanlon goes up to him and he says, I think to kind of get back into some good graces with the media, you should meet with them one-on-one and see what they want from you and what they want from your press conferences and go from there. And so Coughlin meets with, he says, 8 different writers, and the conversations allow me to gain a better understanding of media, their concerns, and how they perceive me. Afterward, I review my notes. Just what do reporters seem to want? And he lists, they want more access to me and the assistant coaches. They want more patience and understanding from me. They want fewer statistics and more insight when I answer questions. They want shorter opening statements so they can get in more questions. The beat writers want more time with me on Fridays. They want me to call reporters by their names, which that made me laugh. And they want me to watch my body language and tone. So he was clearly a bear. And I think it was a good first step for him to kind of get in the good graces of the media, because when you're in the good graces of the media in New York, your job is probably a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very big of him to kind of have those one-on-one sessions and see what the media wants.
Yeah. I mean, you can, I feel like this is so much of a bigger deal in New York than anywhere else. And I really don't think, at least right now, it might have been different when it was just newspaper and it was just radio, right? Might have been different when it was just kind of those two things, and internet too, just blogs and stuff like that. I'm talking, pre social media, everyone is on Twitter. Everyone's getting their news through Twitter, Instagram, whatever. I don't know if the New York media was always, nasty, so tough. I mean, there's more of them, right? There's more New York reporters than there is in, for the Arizona Cardinals, right? There's just more of them. But I never knew if they were always like nasty and intense. I know that, being on the back cover of the paper and the Post, that's never any good. At least right now, I don't really feel like they're like intense and they're mean and they're
no,
bad.
it does. It definitely feels like it's more soft now, which is kind of weird to me because there's so many more outlets and so many more like ways to express stuff like that.
But in New York, nevertheless, and this was my main point, in New York, nevertheless, there's such a value to being a people person.
Right.
There is. I mean, and you see that with the head coach that we have right now for the Giants versus the head coaches, the 2 head coaches that we had previously. Simply just being a people person, even if you're a good coach. Now, obviously, just because you're a good people person doesn't make you a good football coach, but I feel like it can go a long way in terms of communicating with your players, and that's where I really feel like, Coughlin identified that one aspect of, how am I communicating with my players?
Yeah.
We firm, fair, honest, and demanding. But the thing that in America's Game, which he said, I watched the first, my Snacks' prep was reading like the first 3 chapters of this. So that was a lot of prep. My prep was watching the first 10 minutes of America's Game in 2007. And what he said that he needed to add to that slogan, firm, fair, honest, and demanding, was caring. He said he needed to add to that slogan, and not just caring about their development, but also caring about them as
human
people, which that's being a people person. And I think being a people person to players is a very, very important thing. And especially if you want to have the old school take of, oh, these players need to be coddled and these players need to be cared for, blah, 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 you can have that take, but also, I don't know, just as a human being, I would like to be cared for.
Right, exactly. So know that the guy in charge of my profession, my boss, is caring about me, is a very good feeling. That makes you want to play harder. It makes you more attentive and more motivated to actually put in the time and effort. So that's a great segue, because change is what he needed to make after the 2006 season, because he knew if he didn't win 2007, it was game over. So an insert here: over the course of 4 decades, I have coached at 3 colleges and with 5 NFL teams. And at 3 of those stops, I was the head coach. Never once did I question my approach or my process. I knew one way to coach football and deal with my players, and it had worked on both levels. It didn't mean I never took a hard look at myself to improve, but I never sought out a new way to interact with the players. I simply have never believed that a head coach must be friends with his players or tell them how great they are every day to be successful. Rather, my job is to help them be the best they can be, and by doing so, win football games. So Wellington Mara and the Giants hired him in 2004 because that team was undisciplined. They had no leadership, nothing at all. Everything seemed to be dead in the water. So you hire a stern and, a tough football guy like Tom Coughlin that's going to take no shit from anybody. And you saw in 3 years how that wears out on players, that wears out on team morale and everything like that. You have to be a human being. Like you were saying, you have to be caring. You have to be respectful. You don't have to treat them like they are JV players in high school. They are NFL players. You could ride them hard. You could coach them hard, but you also have to show them some kind of compassion or some kind of care that shows them that you're behind them. You have their back. You have their best interest. And I think once you show that compassionate side and that caring side, you will get that out of those players. So I actually laughed at this little paragraph. It said, there is no denying the age gap between me and the men I coach plays a role. There have been many successful coaches in a lot of sports who seem to not have an issue with age difference. Phil Jackson, John Wooden, Tom Landry, and Tom Lasorda. Most of our players were born in the 1980s, and my own children are older than many of the men I coach. When I talk about Vince Lombardi, they wonder who that is. When they play Jay-Z, I say, what is that? When I bring up FDR, they think I'm talking about a highway in New York City. But as obvious as the difference in generations are, the solutions to the problem are not readily apparent. And he goes on to say, change is the theme of the 2007 offseason. And the director of player development, Charles Way, he put it best to Coach Coughlin. This is where it all stems and all the stories you hear about him being softer. He goes, be the guy you are when you're with your children or your grandchildren. And this is what hit Coach Coughlin the hardest. He goes, I am a completely different person with my family and loved ones as I am with my players. And if I show them that side, am I going to be vulnerable? Will they take advantage? Will they not buy in? So his whole thing was really to just kind of interlock both personalities, so to say. Yeah. There's Coach Tom Coughlin, and then there's loving, caring grandfather, father Tom Coughlin, and mix it and find the perfect mix. So he goes on to say, he has a point. I am very different around my loved ones, particularly the grandchildren. Funny, crazy, down to earth, involved. Obviously, I won't be building sandcastles with Eli Manning or playing tag with Michael Strahan, but perhaps I do need to open up to more fully connect with the players. I need to make it obvious that I do care about them and that the caring is sincere. And I think, and we're going to really wrap it up around here because I wanted to bring out the fact that 2007 was all about, it all started with Coach Coughlin changing his philosophy and his way of going about it. So he really he just hammers home how much the change was needed, and he just wanted to have fun. 2007, he wanted it to be fun. And you hear about the bowling trips and you hear about everything. And his first team bonding experience was a casino night in Giant Stadium. All the players there, they had drinks and food and wings. And
were they gambling?
They had play money. Fake money.
There had to be some.
Of course there
under
was.
The table.
Of course there was. Coach Coughlin said he lost all of his play money within the first few minutes. That's how bad he was at it. But he said he got to know everybody better. He was connecting with guys like Osi Umenyiora, talking about everything but football. So really connecting with his players on a personal level and showing his caring side. It started in that offseason, and that's what propelled the 2007 season. So we're through that part.
Love
it. It's a lot, but I thought it was good to start with how the 2007 season came to fruition and how it all started. And it really all did start with Coach Coughlin understanding what he had to do and making the necessary adjustments to do so. So Coach, good for you. And I can't wait to talk about the next 2 chapters next week.
Yeah. I have it up in front of me right here. This will be like our kind of like wrapping up point. He started as the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach in 1995. Mm-hmm. They were a new franchise.
Yeah, brand new
franchise. And within 2 years, they're 11-5. They're 11-5 in 97. They're 11-5 in 98. Then 1999, they're 14-2, and crazy. They make it to the AFC Championship game.
Coach.
Then they take a downward spiral from there. But still, I mean, Tom Coughlin is looking at himself, post 2002. I mean, he doesn't coach for a year, but still, when you take the jump to be the head coach of the New York Football Giants, you know, in terms of changing your personality, that's not something that's on the top of your priority list. You're like,
No.
I just took a new franchise, and within 1-2 years we were playoff, we made the playoffs, and then in another 2 years after that we were in the AFC Championship game.
Right. Like, so so he's sitting there saying, and as he should, saying, I was able to do all of this success with an infant franchise just built from the bottom up, and I took them to this height, all with the coaching style that I've had for the last 30 years.
And
so
now I'm joining the Giants.
Now?
And now I'm joining the Giants.
The New York Giants, my dream job. And all of a sudden, after 3 years, if I don't change my ways, I'm out. And we're fucked. That was my first F word of the night, by the way.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Good fool. That's because you were kind of like the main host this episode. You had like the moderator type of flow to you. How did it feel? It felt good, right?
It felt very good. Once we got like 5 minutes into it, I was like, okay, we're only going to talk about this first chapter because there is a lot to it, and the next 2 chapters can be clunked together. So in my head, I'm thinking, you know what? Let's kind of extend this a little bit longer than I wanted to with chapter 1, because I really found it so interesting, all the intricacies of Tom Coughlin's thought process and how he dealt with his family and the burden on his family and everything going through their minds and his mind. So that's why I wanted to really extend that a bit, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It's a book that I'm a very slow reader. Like, I'll read the newspaper every morning. It takes me an hour, and I read slow, but this book you breeze through because you love it. This is it. This was the greatest season as a fan ever. And getting to hear from the coach firsthand is a breeze. So I hope whoever's listening that hasn't read the book is going to enjoy our follow through with it.
What Will Ferrell movie does he say everybody love everybody?
Semi-Pro.
Hey, I got a ring up here too. Mine says love. Think about that. Everybody love everybody. Come on.
Jackie Moon.
Semi-Pro. That's the theme of the episode. Everybody love everybody.
I got a ring. You know what it says? It says ELE. What's it stand for? Clarence? Everybody love everybody. That's right. Everybody love everybody. Sorry. I was Jackie Moon for Halloween in 2012.
It's a good way to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. You peasants. I'm just kidding. You're all great people.
We love you all.
We do.
Thank you for Bleeding Blue. We will see you next week. Keep on bleeding blue. Until then, peace.